Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. On behalf of the New York State Water Resources Institute, New York Water Environment Association, New York State Floodplain and Stormwater Managers Association, and the Syracuse University Environmental Finance Center, welcome to today's webinar on developing resilient stormwater systems with the Municipal Downspout Disconnect and Green Infrastructure Program. In this 90-minute webinar, experts from the New York State Water Resources Institute, SUEFC, New York State DEC, and more focus on stormwater system resiliency through an introduction to municipal downspout disconnection and green infrastructure. We'll begin today with presentations from 3 of our experts, and we'll conclude with a facilitated discussion with our panelists, followed by a Q&A session with your questions as time allows. First, for a little bit about the Environmental Finance Center, our team enhances the managerial and financial capacity of regional and local governments, nonprofit organizations, and local residents to improve environmental infrastructure, services, and quality of life. Our partnership with our co-hosts for this webinar series is supported under a grant by the Rural Utilities Service, housed in the United States Department of Agriculture. The New York State Water Resources Institute's mission is to advance water resource management and address critical water resource problems in New York State and the nation through research, education, and outreach. If you have any questions about WRI, please use the contact information shown and visit their website at wri.cals.cornell.edu. And a huge thanks to WRI for putting this webinar together today. I also want to say thank you to 2 of our co-hosting organizations. First, the New York Water Environment Association, or NYWEA, serves the best interests of the public by promoting sustainable clean water management through science, education, and training. If you have any questions about NYWEA, please use the contact information shown and visit the website at nywea.org. The New York State Floodplain and Stormwater Managers Association's mission is to bring together New York State professionals to foster awareness, information exchange, and cooperation in the floodplain and stormwater management fields. Please use the contact information about NSFSMA shown on this slide. And again, a huge thank you to our partners for helping us get the word out about today's webinar, and welcome to NSFSMA members today as well. Now I wanted to talk with you about a couple of logistics on the GoToWebinar platform today. During the webinar today, everyone will be kept on mute to ensure audio quality. If you have a question, please type it into the GoToWebinar question dialog box in your GoToWebinar control panel anytime you have a question throughout the session. We'll be holding most of the questions for a facilitated discussion at the end of the panel introductions. We'll also post this presentation. We'll have a recording that we'll be able to post on the Syracuse University Environmental Finance Center's website. And that information will be in a follow-up email that includes a link to all of the materials to access resources after the webinar today. So just a quick reminder, if you have a question, be sure to use your questions dialog box today. Next, I also want to share that we have applied for and received approval for 1 continuing education credit for certified floodplain managers today by the ASFPM. Registered attendees can receive a certificate of attendance for participating in the webinar today. To receive a certificate of attendance, we ask that you attend for the entire duration of the webinar and that you register and attend using your real name and unique email address. You should utilize the document to self-submit, the certificate of completion, to self-submit for continuing education credits. We, just as sort of a broad disclaimer, we can't guarantee that this webinar will be accepted by your licensing or professional development agency for continuing education credits. So if you require a certificate of attendance or to apply for credit hours, please contact SUEFC at adavis02@syr.edu or check our website at efc.syr.edu. We'll be glad to help. So then I want to just do a quick look with you all at the agenda today. We can begin today's discussion in a few minutes. So first up, Kristen Hitchka from New York State Water Resources Institute will kick us off with an introduction to municipal downspout connection and disconnection. And then we'll go on to resilient stormwaters with Andrew Sansone from Monroe County Stormwater Coalition. And then a short presentation from Chris Dotson at Syracuse University Environmental Finance Center. And then our discussion panel with our guests, Mary McSwan, David Gaspar, Ethan Sullivan, and Nancy Heinzen from the Stormwater Coalition of Albany County. And then questions and answers where we're looking forward to hearing from you today during the webinar. So with that note, I would like to turn things over to Kristen Hitchka. And so I'm going to exit out here and hand over presentation to Kristen.
Morning,
there
everyone.
We go. And we can stream.
Great. And are you seeing my screen?
Yeah, we can see your presentation. Fantastic, Kristen.
All right. Well, thank you. Thanks, Meredith, for that great intro. I'm Kristen Hitchka, and I'm going to kick us off here. Oh, there we go. Okay. So just to build off of Meredith's intro, I just want to do a quick thank you to the speakers and panelists who agreed to be part of this today. They really represent a great breadth of experience and knowledge, helping hundreds of communities across the state with various stormwater, green infrastructure, and disconnection issues. And they're representing technical knowledge, sort of program coordination, funding, regulatory, lots of different perspectives. So it's going to be a great discussion today. But I also want to recognize the audience, and we are going to have some polls coming up to talk with you. But looking at the attendees, there's a lot of knowledge and experience that you all are bringing. So thank you so much, and really looking forward to your contributions in the later parts of our discussion.
Kristen, do you want me to do that first poll question where we ask where folks are coming from?
Maybe at the end of my talk. Is that all right?
Oh, you betcha. We'll do it then. Okay, thanks.
Okay, thanks. So why are we here? And you showed up, so you have your reasons for being here. But generally speaking, you all have seen this, or you live this experience. We're seeing increased runoff from a number of reasons. One being increased impervious surface cover, reduced infiltration, and increasing runoff. Another piece of the picture here is that we're seeing more extreme precipitation, happening in extreme events. So what I'm showing right here is this is historical data. This is not any forecast. This is just looking 1958 to 2016. What have been the change in extreme precipitation? So what in this case they're saying is how much of your annual precipitation happens during those 1% largest storm events. So often what you're designing your systems to handle. And what this is showing is that there's a huge change, and we're right in the center of where all that change is happening up here in the Northeast. And this is showing forecasted, so projecting into the future this is actually going to increase. As we get towards the later part of the 21st century, we're going to see even more of our precipitation coming in the form of extreme events. As we all know, there is some uncertainty around that, but we're definitely seeing that in the data already. Again, as I said on the left here, these are observations we're seeing. So all this is happening in the context of you know, New York State, many places we have aging and undersized infrastructure. So in 2017, this is just one piece of information about that from the New York State Comptroller, that they estimated we needed $80 billion to repair, maintain, replace drinking and wastewater infrastructure in New York over the next 20 years. So that isn't just talking about this undersizing issue. That's obviously much more than that, but you know, it gives a sense of what, you know, our context, what you all are dealing with. You are all on the front lines. You are all trying to make decisions about how to maintain, improve your water infrastructure, New York State's water infrastructure. So one piece of this puzzle is ooh, and some of my graphics didn't come through here. That's all right. So can you see my pointer, Meredith? Can you see that?
Yes, we can.
Great. Okay. So so basically, when we're talking about disconnection, and I'm guessing most of you are familiar with this, connections is when a downspout, or, and we don't show it on here, maybe a sump pump from houses or buildings are connected directly to the sanitary sewer system. So not just the sewer, but during rain events, you're getting water into the sanitary sewer system from houses. So this is from the town of Olean, and what they estimate was that a typical 8-inch sanitary sewer can handle domestic sewage from 225 homes, but it only takes 5 sump pumps operating at full capacity to overload an 8-inch sanitary sewer. So this can be a huge problem in your municipality. So this is when, and unfortunately this whole graphic didn't show up, but basically what it's trying to show is that if you cap, you know, one of the things you can do is disconnect those connections. So take out your downspout and your sump pump connections. What ends up happening is you'll get less water into your sanitary sewer system. You may be exacerbating local flood conditions. So pairing this disconnect with some kind of green, localized green infrastructure program where you can help, you know, not only will it reduce these connections to the sanitary sewer system, but also, provide these localized benefits. So generally, you know, it took us a while to come up with a title for this. There's a lot of pieces to what we're talking about. But basically, what is the program or the coordination that you could put together either at a municipal, regional level that deals with connecting disconnection with green infrastructure to improve and create resilient stormwater systems and resilient sanitary systems? And we're fortunate to have our next speaker talk about this in more detail. Community motivation. So again, our next speaker will talk about this too, but you know, we're all coming from different regulatory you know, coordination levels. And so, you know, some people are doing these programs because they're a CSO and they're under a decree. It may be an MS4 and you have permit requirements, or others you're just dealing with infrastructure capacity issues. So one example is in a CSO is Washington, D.C. They created a big program, Drain the Rain and Clean Rivers Project, where they developed a voluntary program for free downspout disconnects, free rain barrels, and free technical assistance and design. So they actually had people coming out to the site. So I'm down, I just have a minute here, so I'm going to breeze through this. But we put together a report kind of based on this experience. We had a student, a master's of regional planning student who had worked at DC Water, and she was trying to pull some of the knowledge and experience into guidance that would help local municipalities. So this is roughly the timeline that the steps, setting your baseline, determining your budget, determining your program structure, setting your timeline, target audience, and then structure your outreach efforts. So I'm going to stop here just a minute, but talking with the speakers, and they will get into this more, speakers and panelists. There's really more to this. You really need to assess your enabling conditions for green infrastructure and also think about funding for program development. So I'm going to breeze through all this, but these programs can vary greatly in how they're administered, whether they're voluntary or compliance-based. The types of resources that are provided, are they free? Are they is there just some kind of incentive? And then how are you tracking it? So some of the resources we share are technical. There's an outreach strategy. There's a program comparison where you can see lots of different approaches. So there's many, many ways to go about this. And then there's a checklist, some of the first steps you could take and some of the questions you might take. So to finish up here, again, decide what's right for you and your municipality. What are your motivations? What is your, what do your plans look like? And listen and hopefully use this opportunity, this webinar, to learn from the practical experience of the folks that are on this call, technical, programmatic, disconnection, green infrastructure, learn about funding and the resources that are available. So thank you very much. Looking forward to our conversation today.
Thank you, Chris.
I will add that we're going to hold questions from the speakers to the panel, unless there happens to be time.
Yeah, that sounds good. Let's do. Well, we're transferring over to Andrew Sansone. I'll just do a quick introduction here and share the screen with him. And we can also run that poll right quick just to find out where folks are joining us from today. So Andy, I'm passing over presentation controls to you, and you can be getting ready and set to go. I just want to quickly say, it's Meredith again from SUEFC, that the report that Kristen referred to is in your handout section, and I will also post a direct link to that report as well. We'd love for you to download it. And if we've got a quick second here, I'll go ahead and run our poll question, and here it goes. I'm going to launch it. We're just looking for a little information from where folks are coming from today. So what is your organization or agency? And we'll invite you to enter your answer in the quick poll screen. And I'll leave it open for a few seconds. But we're looking forward just to get a better sense of where folks are coming from for the webinar today. Kind of helps our speakers and panelists. Thanks. And I'll leave it open for another few seconds. We've got a great response rate. Thanks everybody for just clicking in today and letting us know where you're coming from. And in 3 seconds, I'll go ahead and close this poll. 3, 2, 1, thanks. And I'm gonna just share the results real quick and just let the panelists and speakers know that we've got 58% coming from local government today. 22% coming from the private sector, and then 16% from regional and state government. So fantastic for participating. That's great. And then now, Andy, we can see your screen, and I just want to be sure to introduce Andy as the Industrial Waste Engineer, Monroe County Department of Environmental Services, Office of Waste Control, and from the Stormwater Coalition of Monroe County. So, Andy.
Good to go?
Yes, we can see your presentation and
okay.
Hear you just fine. I think you're all set.
All right, well, thank you. Thank you, Kristen. Thank you, Meredith. Again, I'm Andy from Monroe County. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about our program and be part of this panel discussion because it's a really good topic. We haven't talked about green infrastructure as much lately as we've done in the past, so it's really an important topic for all of us. And my approach for my little 15-minute talk is to do a bit of a case study, talk about how we've approached green infrastructure and downspout disconnection in Monroe County, and what brought us there, and where we see ourselves today. First off, a real quick thought on our program. Our stormwater program has 3 components: surface water monitoring, regulatory, and water quality planning. And through that, county staff, we facilitate the Stormwater Coalition. And really, in doing that, it includes all those parts of our stormwater program. So it's 26 municipalities, and it's all in response to the MS4 permit. When green infrastructure became important for us in 2010, and that's when a new stormwater permit and updates to the New York State Design Manual brought green infrastructure into our world for the MS4s. And what it required us to do was reduce runoff from new construction, implement green infrastructure practices and planning methods, and required redevelopment standards. So if we're going to redevelop a site, we had to consider green infrastructure in that development. So our process, it was a long time in the works, right? So the first thing, if those that were around in 2010, you remember, it was quite a lot of conversation, a lot of training, just trying to understand what was the regulation, what was required, how do we calculate the runoff reduction, how do we utilize these various standards and determine soils and things like that. So there was a ton of training at that time to try to get our programs kind of wrapped around what it is that we're trying to do. And so we were really big into training and education at that point. Locally, we then started to do a lot of demonstration projects. So we looked at the variety of stormwater practices that were in the design manual and tried through various methods and partners and municipalities. Let's see if we can, do some of these practices, find out how to design them, how to build them, how to maintain them. And then we could show, the private sector and the community that green infrastructure can work. We accomplished that largely through grants, and along the way we had some obstacles, right? And so I'm going to touch on all of these topics as I go on. First off, and Kristen mentioned this, and her slide was great. It really all of us come at this from a different direction. And if you're a CSO community, your driver for green infrastructure is a little bit different than if you're an MS4 community. And in our case, we have both. We have City of Rochester's combined sewers. There's with some separate sewers, and the rest of the county are part of the MS4 program. So we have different drivers, right? Different goals. So the CSO, you're limiting volume. You're looking for to limit the number and quantity of CSO. For the MS4, it's runoff reduction and water quality. And so we have our own regulatory mechanisms. A really important thing is we have different design standards too. If you're a CSO community, you're kind of left to your own devices to determine, what are the standards you're going to set for bioretention and different practices. Where on the MS4 side, we largely follow the state design manual. And a big piece is the funding. What I've seen is if the CSO communities that are doing a lot of green infrastructure, they have a sanitary sewer utility. It's been maybe a little bit easier for them to add that component to their utility fees to generate the funding to do some of these practices. On the MS4 side, we've not had much luck with developing stormwater utilities, which would give us a fee base to be able to implement some practices as far as retrofits. The training we really embrace wholeheartedly. This is just a graphic from 2011. This is our Soil and Water Conservation District, does a lot of training. And this is just a report that they did for the amount of training they did in 2011. So you can see lots of training sessions, lots of people trained on all various audiences, municipal staff, design staff, state government officials, and that is ongoing. So there's really a lot of audiences here that need to be aware of what we're trying to accomplish and what these different techniques are and how they impact the community. So training and messaging has been really important for us. On the public side, we have the H2O Hero program. That's our public outreach, and we've encouraged homeowners to disconnect their downspouts. So the graphic on the left is a graphic we use for print ads and on Facebook and Instagram, and on the right is the page on stormwater education page, h2hero.org, that talks about gutters and downspouts, how you as a homeowner can do this on your own. Demonstration projects, we've done quite a few, and largely from grants. And here's an example: we did we took a cul-de-sac and we put a bioretention in the center of it. So we have a big variety of these demonstration projects. And as I said, we tried to touch all different types of practices, both large and small. So here's a little rain garden at a cemetery, and a very large green roof in the city of Rochester on the county. The roof is actually on a parking garage that's underground. So took this large impervious area and built a green roof on it. So we tried to do these practices of all different shapes and sizes. And what helped us was grant funding. The money's out there. If you want to do this type of thing, if you're interested in demonstration projects or implementation of your program, the grant funding is out there. We've had great success early on. The MS4 compliance grants, helped us establish our coalition and our the base of that. But you can see we've got over $9 million in grants that have helped us implement green infrastructure projects. So what have been some of the obstacles? Of course, education, helping people understand what we're trying to do. Demonstration projects, some are successful, some are not. That's why you do them. And sometimes when you're the first one to do, a porous concrete parking lot, and maybe it doesn't go well, that's what you learn from. That's what you're demonstrating, and so those are important. The public and private. It's encouraging to see not only a lot of municipal people on this call today, but also a lot of private sector and consultants. We really have to work together to understand and develop and design these practices. And one of the obstacles that we saw right away was building codes, and that's something that Christian mentioned. And a project that we did that was funded by a grant, we used the Genesee Regional Planning Council and Jamie Tholman, if many of you know her. We did this assessment with a half a dozen or so municipalities, where we went through and used the Center for Watershed Protection worksheet to look at their codes. And what we wanted to see are, what are the obstacles to green infrastructure in terms of connecting or disconnecting downspouts, the size of porous pavement, the size of parking spaces, the number of parking spaces. All these things are in the municipal codes. And if you can understand where they are and go in then and change some of these codes to make green infrastructure a little bit easier to implement, then it just helps you. And so what we did in terms of downspout disconnection, one of the areas on this questionnaire was on rooftop runoff. And you can see, the question asks, is a disconnected downspout allowed? And some of the responses that we got were that can rooftop runoff be discharged to yard area? In some of the cases, it was no. Planning board approval was required. So anytime anybody wanted to build a new structure and have a disconnected downspout, it would have to go to the planning board for approval. So once you uncover that, then you can modify your code, which many of our municipalities did, to say, it can be downspout can be disconnected if you have the appropriate soils, or if it goes to a rain garden or bioretention. And one of the other bits was is ponding water allowed? The reason downspouts are connected largely is people don't want ponding water in their yards. And so, if you want to allow a disconnected downspout, you may have to modify your code that says, yes, ponding water is allowed for a certain period of time. So that was a big obstacle for us, and I think we overcame that in many areas. And so here we are today, 2021. We're in, I guess, what we think of as the implementation phase. We aren't doing quite as many demonstration projects. Mostly what we see with green infrastructure is from new construction. We aren't doing a lot of retrofits, and unless it's a redevelopment project, but and I think that's a funding issue, right? So we would like to do some things in right-of-ways and municipal property, but it comes down to funding and being able to do that. Design and installation challenges, we had those early on, and we still occasionally see that, where we have a practice that doesn't go in quite as it's designed to do. Kind of one of my main interests is guaranteeing the long-term performance of these. And that comes down to how we're going to maintain these practices, along with the practices that we already have. So just some examples. So here's one, a design or installation flaw. We're not sure which one, but here you have a bioretention, you have a curb cut, and the water comes in and just directly goes into the catch basin. So all the vegetation is above the water line, so to speak. So it's really not a bioretention. So, you know, we're not sure if this was a design or an installation problem. My thinking was an installation. You know, we've run into some challenges where, you know, folks don't generally understand, you know, what the function of some of these types of things are. But we get a lot of new construction and a lot of it goes in fairly well, right? So here's commercial development, kind of what's become the standard practice for us for bioretention. This is a county facility, our fleet center, where we did a big project. We built this building, and to be honest, the simplest practice we could put in was downspout disconnection. It really requires no maintenance other than the soil area, the vegetated area here where the water is going to run. It's a simple practice. We needed something in this area that was going to be low maintenance, and we went with the rooftop disconnection. So you know, we're pretty happy with how that's gone so far. And again, getting back to my, you know, one of my main themes is ensuring resilient systems means long-term maintenance. And if we've all got some experience with bioretention now, and this is an example of you know, a tree lawn area that's overgrown. You know, when you install these, you're looking for a you know, a certain appearance and a certain function, and if you let them get overgrown for very long, you start to run into some problems. And one of the ways we've tried to address that is a couple years ago, we developed stormwater management practice dashboard. So we mapped out every stormwater practice in the county that included ponds, dry ponds, alternative practices, and green infrastructure. So the red dots, all the dots represent a practice, and the various color dots represent ones that have been inspected. And really long term, this is a good way for us to keep track of what's been built, what's in the ground, and how are we going to inspect and maintain these. And this is a way for us as the county to not so much to oversee this, but to look at you know, how these are being done. If we have some municipalities that are struggling with the inspections and the maintenance, how can we help them with that? And so how this works is you go out and you do your inspection, and here's an example of a swale that was inspected, and we follow this inspection form follows the DEC method for green infrastructure inspection. And so we're hoping to do this with all these practices and create this long-term database of a function that'll help us, you know, keep these systems working. Again, not only the green infrastructure, but, you know, ponds. We want to focus on new things, but we also have to make sure that what's in the ground and what's already been built is functioning as designed. So it's a really important piece of our program. And that's it for me. If you want to find out some more information on these topics, there's our Stormwater Coalition website and our H2O Hero program website, if you want to look at some of our green infrastructure messaging for the public. And of course, my email address, if anybody has a question or would want to discuss it further, you can feel free to reach out. And I'll turn it back to you, Meredith.
Thank you so much, Andy. That was great. Great presentation. Very cool stuff. I'm going to hand things over to Chris right now. Chris Dotson is our next speaker. And Chris is the Associate Director of the Syracuse University Environmental Finance Center. And he's going to speak with us for a few minutes about funding for green infrastructure, and also the flip side of that, which is savings for green infrastructure, cost savings that green infrastructure and downspout disconnection can realize. So Chris, thanks. We can see your screen, and thanks everyone. Keep those questions coming in. We're holding them for the panelists.
Thanks, Meredith. I wanted to spend a few minutes talking about funding for how to pay for green infrastructure and some opportunities, and also looking at cost avoidance. That's often one of the first places to look when you're managing for stormwater, using green infrastructure. What are some of the costs that you already have, and how can you use green infrastructure to abate those costs? So, looking at the state of where things are today, what is the cost of not managing for stormwater? As Kristen mentioned earlier, our precipitation over the last 60 years has increased. Well, the amount of extreme weather has increased in the Northeast by about 50%. So that means we see a lot more flooding events, a lot more localized flooding, a lot more infrastructure challenges where the capacity of our built environment is less than the need. And part of that is because of stormwater, part of that is because of aging infrastructure. We have I&I issues, infiltration and inflow, and that just these rapid precipitation events where we never expected to have to manage for. So, what are the costs to both real and perceived to these events? And when I say perceived, I mean, these quality of life challenges when folks, when their roads are flooded or their basements back up, and other types of things that may not have a dollar value assigned to them, but certainly do impact the quality of life in living in our communities. This is one such flooding event. This is Syracuse, downtown Syracuse, May of 2011, which was a while ago. But we got 2 inches of rain in half an hour, and it cost $50 million worth of damages that were claimed. So, looking at some of the benefits of paying for green infrastructure, Andy mentioned it a minute ago when he showed a picture of a streetscape with the grass there, right? And he said there's a certain aesthetic that you want to maintain. And so there's a number of ancillary benefits to green infrastructure aside from just capturing stormwater. Some are quantifiable, some are not. Again, I mentioned the quality of life issues. Is that streetscape more attractive because there's greenery on it than just pavement and concrete from edge to edge? So, looking at, and what we've done here in Syracuse and around the state, improved streetscapes. So when we've gone in to put in green infrastructure in the city of Syracuse, also replacing transportation infrastructure, upgrading sidewalks or replacing sidewalks. Through those upgrades, there's also ADA accessibility compliance, which was able to take place at the same time that we're digging up the street to put in green infrastructure, replacing other types of infrastructure, et cetera, et cetera. So when we go in to make these retrofits, there's an opportunity to improve other aspects of the infrastructure. Taking stormwater out of the system, particularly in a CSO community, increases the capacity of that infrastructure to better manage the water, the effluent that needs to be treated. When we have rainwater entering the sewer system, that rainwater doesn't necessarily need to be treated to the same standard as sanitary sewer, right? So we're spending money for pumping and chemicals and everything else that is involved in cleaning sanitary sewer on stormwater that doesn't necessarily have to take place. The same can be said for infiltration and inflow. We have groundwater, stormwater entering our pipes that take up capacity and cost money to clean that water that doesn't necessarily have to be there. Also looking for ways to manage stormwater, but using other pockets of money, if you will, or hitting other benefits, right? So we could see improving parks and schools and libraries with green infrastructure, right? Putting new roofs, new green roofs on buildings, The USPS, the Postal Service here I mentioned because we put a green roof on a post office here in Syracuse. Excuse me. Now, increased property value and/or investment. Whenever you invest, it increases. It often increases the value of that property or of that block if you redo the street and the sidewalks, et cetera, et cetera. It has been said many times by my colleagues, green infrastructure is economic development. People don't build where there isn't solid infrastructure. People don't want to build, rather, where there isn't solid infrastructure. They want to know they have something to rely on. And then being able to quantify some of those ecosystem services of green infrastructure. What is the reduction in heat island effect by putting in rain gardens and other cooling and green roofs and other kind of cooling green infrastructure technologies that also, helps reduce the energy load in those areas, just as an example. So I mentioned infiltration and inflow. I just wanted to, for those of you who may not be familiar with it, to show you a couple of images of what that is. We've got old infrastructure, we've got failing infrastructure. Sewer lines are not pressurized, therefore it's easy for things to leak in at the seams and through cracks. We've got tree roots invading our pipes and creating blockages, also creating holes for water to come through. We also have illegal connections where folks may illegally connect a sump pump or something like that to the sewer line so that they can drain their own property. And down here below is just a video image of groundwater just entering a sewer pipe. And again, this water costs money to treat, and it doesn't necessarily need to be treated. And it takes up capacity especially during times of high flow, like during storm events. This is an old tool. Well, I shouldn't say old. It's been around for a while, so it's time tested. The green values calculator. So it really helps you quantify some of these benefits that I just mentioned. It compares green infrastructure to gray infrastructure, the life cycle costs, and also looking at the economic, environmental, social benefits. These ancillary benefits that I mentioned before. It's a helpful tool to help you understand, wrap your head around the benefit of green infrastructure beyond stormwater, and then to put it next to its gray counterpart, so to speak, and looking at the upfront costs of construction, design construction, but also the life cycle costs of operations and maintenance, which we often forget at the beginning of developing infrastructure projects. Is how much is it going to cost to maintain operate and/or maintain this infrastructure along its useful life.
Great. Chris, did we lose you?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Yeah.
Yeah, you did not lose me, but you lost my PowerPoint. Just if you can give me a minute, my PowerPoint, my machine just closed my PowerPoint because it thought that was a good idea.
No problem. Hey, I have another poll question. I'm just giving you a second, Chris. We could run.
Let's do that. Yeah, Microsoft shut down my PowerPoint. So why don't you go ahead and run that while I try to open it again.
Well, and it gives you a little bit of space to get this open again. So I've got another quick question. This is another just very informal question, but it helps us get a little bit of information about our audience today. So I'm going to go ahead and launch a poll one more time, and this is an interactive piece with you all. Our question is, and I've opened it up, is your municipality or municipalities you work with part of a stormwater coalition? And just go ahead and select an answer there for us, and this will give us a sense of whether or not you all are participating in stormwater coalitions. And thank you for answering the polls here. We've got a good response here. I'm going to leave it open for a few more seconds just to give folks a chance to respond. And I'll close the poll in about 3 seconds. 3, 2, 1. And I'm going to share the results. So is your municipality part of a stormwater coalition? 48% of you said yes. 21% no. And then for 19% of you, there's a little bit of uncertainty on whether or not you are. So good to hear from you guys, and great to see that 48% yes as being part of a stormwater coalition. I'll go ahead and close the poll, and then Chris, do you want to be able to share your screen? Great, we can see your screen. We've got your desktop. You've got a lot of stickies.
Yeah, don't look at those. All right, I think you've seen my PowerPoint again.
Yes, looks good. Thanks, Chris.
Yep. So this is the slide I was trying to advance to when it shut down. So I wanted to talk a little bit about a couple of funding opportunities that help support green infrastructure and better stormwater non-point source solutions in New York. I assume most, if not all of you, know about the New York State Consolidated Funding application that is run through the Regional Economic Development Council program that was set up about 10 years ago by Governor Cuomo. Just as a brief reminder or overview, a lot of the funding programs from the state, everything from arts to education to water and wastewater and transportation, is run through economic development, is run through the CFA process. The applications typically open in late April, early May, mid-May, with a late July deadline. You can find out more about them at regionalcouncils.ny.gov. You can see the map here that shows how the state is broken up into those regional councils. Each regional council has, it is a council. There are people on it. Chances are you recognize some of those names for your regional council. There are also subgroups and working groups based on certain things. I mean, someone who can make decisions about funding arts isn't probably the same person who is making decisions about funding water infrastructure. So, these types of, so there are working groups that advise in different topic areas as well. And chances are you may know someone in one of those working groups. My point of bringing that up is you want to check out who's on these working groups or on the council, because if you decide you want to apply to state funding for really any reason, today we're talking about green infrastructure and downspout disconnect. Excuse me, I have a little bit of a cold. 20 points out of 100, so 20% of your scoring for your project to be approved for funding comes from that local regional economic development council. So it's good to be able to chat with folks at that level about your project, about your intent, and about their goals, their objectives for that year. Every year, the regional economic development councils have to provide a report on their progress toward the things that region is most interested in investing in. And so you want to be able to make sure you're in line with those things. So if you're interested in any of these funding programs, you're going to want to at least check out their website. And it's November right now. It is not too early to be thinking about a May application. There's a lot to be done to get an application, to the finish line, so to speak. The cool thing is they provide these two. The covers look identical, but they're two different resources. One is an application guide. It's a step-by-step on how to apply through the CFA with screenshots and everything. It's all done electronically these days. and then the available CFA resources. And I'll talk about a couple of those specific ones here in a second. And, again, the CFA available resources is like 200 pages. But if you're interested in the Green Innovation Grant Program, well, you can toggle very quickly to where that description starts, and then there's 3 or 4 pages that describe that specific program. So everything is listed there, and it's very easy to navigate. So again, before I move on, there's the website. When the CFA opens this spring, next spring, there will be public meetings. I assume they'll now, because of COVID, has introduced the ease of virtual meetings. There'll probably be some virtual ones, but there will probably also be in-person ones as well. So just a couple of programs I wanted to mention that are focused on today's topic. So the WQIP Water Quality Implementation Project. This is a New York State DEC program. And I know we have folks on from DEC and EFC, so if I misspeak or if you have any other information, please share it when you can. Municipalities are eligible for this. Soil and water conservation districts are eligible for this. The non-agricultural, non-point source. So this means not farm related, stormwater management. And you can see the eligible categories here. Decentralized wastewater facilities, nature-based shorelines, particularly along the Great Lakes, beach restoration, culvert repair and replacement, funding non-point source programs, which I take to mean funding programs like stormwater coalitions, looking at controlling for nutrients, stream bank stabilization, riparian buffers, etc. So there's a 25% match here. I do understand, excuse me, that this is one state program that may see an increase in funding this year based on Governor Hochul's announcement last week or the week before about an additional $600 million in state funding for resiliency. This is one of those programs that I think was identified to receive a portion of that additional funding. So there may be additional opportunity for awarded projects here. There's also the oh geez, it did it again.
Oh, darn. Do you
My
want
Microsoft does not like me today.
Yeah. Do you want to just talk through this, or are you almost finished with your slides?
Yeah, in the interest of time, I will just talk through it because I don't want to take up anybody else's time.
Okay.
Constantly reopening my PowerPoint. All right, so the other thing I was going to say now, so that's the non-agricultural non-point source program. There's also the non-point source planning grant. So if you don't actually know what it is that you want to fund or what you want to build, you might have a problem. You might a stormwater management concern, but you're not quite sure what the best solution is. There's also a grant through the WQIP that you can apply for. This helps pay for engineering planning reports, which are very important to determine whether or not a project's feasible, whether or not this project is in the right place at the right time for the right price. So I, in hindsight, probably could have put that slide first because you may want to look at those planning grants before you look at the money for implementation. We also have the Climate Smart Communities program through the DEC. There's two components to that, really. There's the certification projects for planning, assessments, inventories, development of resiliency strategies, climate smart strategies for communities. And then there's the implementation money. Once you go through the certification process, you can then get access to the implementation money. And the type of projects that will fund is increasing natural resiliency to flood risk. Again, the living shorelines, nature-based landscape features. This is stormwater management, both onshore and inland, relocating or retrofitting infrastructure, replacing or right-sizing flow barriers. When you think of stormwater, we've been talking about kind of urbanized green infrastructure practices like downspout disconnection, and green roofs and rain gardens and other things. But looking at other areas where we have streams that often overtop, or the culverts that might go under bridges and roads become flood areas because they're not right-sized. This is an opportunity to get funding to repair those things. Now, finally, is the EFC, Environmental Facilities Corporation, Green Innovation Grant Program. This is another program that was identified through Governor Hochul's announcement for additional funding this year. So again, there may be more opportunity here than there has been in years past. And the Green Innovation Grant Program is almost exclusively there to fund green infrastructure projects. And it's been around for about 10 years. It's a 90-10 match, meaning that they fund 90% of the project and you have to come up with the other 10% on your own. So that is my last slide. So I will share these slides with the team here so that you guys can see my last 3 or 4 slides or refer back to any of the information that I've shared with you today. And I apologize that my Microsoft's being so quirky. I will blame Bill Gates and leave it there.
Thanks so much, Chris. That's great. And of course, it's a Monday, so technology is just not going to work for us. But what I'll do now, it's Meredith back again from the Environmental Finance Center, and I will ask Kristen to join me and the panelists as well. And I think what I'll do is I'm going to share my screen so everybody can see the panelist's name. And let me do that right quick here. And I'm going to show my screen and hopefully everybody can see that okay. Great. So I want to just, and everybody's got their cameras on. Thank you so much. I just want to quickly remind everybody we've got Andy Sansone and Kristen Hitchka, who we've already heard from. And as well joining us today, we have Nancy Heinzen from the Stormwater Coalition of Albany County, Ethan Sullivan and David Gasper, who are both from the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation. Ethan is the MS4 General Permit Coordinator and Assistant Engineer at the Division of Water. And David is the Bureau of Water Permits, Professional Engineer at Bureau of Water Permits, also Division of Water at New York State DEC. And Mary McSwan is the Coordinator of the Western New York Stormwater Coalition and Environmental Compliances Services Division in the Erie County of Environment and Planning. And I think that's everybody.
That
So,
is, yeah.
you want to take it away and maybe put out the first question to the panel? And just one quick reminder to the audience, keep sending questions in. We want to hear from you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, please keep sending them in. And thank you to the speakers. I think you set us up for a great discussion. I'm going to start off by giving the people who weren't speakers to have just a few minutes to introduce themselves and to talk about their experience with green infrastructure and disconnection programs, and to plug anything that's happening in their worlds right now. So maybe I'll start with you, Nancy. You want to take a few minutes to introduce yourself?
Okay, yeah, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah, so I'm Nancy Heinzen, Director of the Albany County Stormwater Coalition of Albany County. The coalition has 12 regulated public entities, MS4s. 10 are town, villages, and cities. 1 is University of Albany. And then Albany County, which is both the host and member of the coalition. We're on a sliding scale membership fee, which supports 2 full-time staff people and then 1 part-time person. County supplements what we do with a lot of in-kind services like office space. Just to kind of hone in on our green infrastructure related activities, there's sort of the early era, which would be from 2010 until about 2013 or so, putting together publications about how to do downspout disconnection. All of which I'll be talking about is on the Coalition website. We also did general maintenance cards for a lot of the post-construction stormwater practices, which were very detailed, actually modeled after the Staten Island Blue Belt program. And really the push was education. As Andy mentioned, with the design manual coming out in 2010 and the requirement in the MS4 permit to educate public planning boards, we then focused on doing what Monroe County did, which was an analysis of land use law to see where the obstacles were for using green infrastructure. That was a humongous project. We did the surveys with all members, including University of Albany and the county and the towns, villages, and cities, identified gaps in the laws, and then created model local laws. And that was done with Barton LaJudas as the consulting firm. It was a big effort. So really getting into the details of what would that code language look like if you did want to reduce impervious surface at parking lots, if you did want to encourage downspout disconnect. So I encourage people to look for that on our website. More recently, we've focused on mapping, storm system infrastructure mapping, identifying the location of those post-construction practices, some of which are green infrastructure practices, and trying to beef up our collective ability to use GIS technology, which is very uneven within our group. Some have GIS, some don't. And then integrating the location of a lot of the practices along with outfalls into the inspection forms using Esri technology. With that, we also did a big project of mapping all of the impervious areas in Albany County, and then had an add-on project, which was to cost out what would it really cost to implement the MS4 permit, the draft one going forward, to include maintenance, because we all recognize that that's a huge deficit in all of the programs, municipal-wide, MS4-wide. And then from there, had the consulting firm calculate how much money could be generated using a stormwater utility district by changing the amount of imperviousness and the rating structure. That's on our website. We had focused on 3 municipalities, one of which is the largest suburban community. The other 2 were small villages. And what you can generate is incredible if you do set up a utility district. We didn't get into the politics of that because it gets very complicated very quickly, but at least we have some hard numbers now to really figure out what the real costs are to move forward implementing a comprehensive MSOR program and actually do all of the infrastructure improvements that you might want to do on your storm system infrastructure. That's a really quick recap. I know Mary probably wants to talk about Western New York, so I'll leave it there, and I will take, certainly if there are any questions about Albany County, I can get into that in more detail later. So that's it.
Well, thank you, Nancy. I think, yeah, maybe that was a good lead up for Mary. Mary, you want to introduce yourself and your program?
Oh, certainly. Mary McSwan, as we all know, and I work for the Erie County Department of Environment and Planning, and also have been coordinating the Western New York Stormwater Coalition since it was created in 2002. So we have 44 municipalities that come together on a regular basis to share our knowledge and resources as a means to comply with the New York State Speedies general permit for MS4s. So over those past 19 years, we've developed a variety of programs that includes mapping the entire storm sewer system within the regulated areas of those 44 municipalities, which also entails 2 counties, I might add, as well. We've also developed inspection protocols and apps for outfalls, construction sites, post-construction practices, including green infrastructure, and also municipal facilities. And also, one of the things I take a very active role is all of the employee trainings, whether they're required or more of enrichment with regards to stormwater. But with regards to regulatory compliance, those employee trainings focus on illicit discharge detection and elimination, a sampling protocol that we developed so that our stormwater officers can kind of do it right in their own buildings, a quick and dirty sample and try and characterize flow. Also trainings on construction inspection, which includes actual field components, post-construction inspection, and also a training on just to train various staff on assessing their own municipal operations and facilities, walking through their facilities and yards, and just helping them identify problem areas and filling out a checklist to document those inspections. We also have a fairly comprehensive public education and outreach program. Our public participation work includes a variety of downspout disconnection initiatives, such as an annual rain barrel and compost bin sale, an annual rain barrel painting contest for local schools and other youth-based community groups. And for that, we provide all of our entrants with a barrel, a food grade 55-gallon barrel, and a rain barrel connection retrofit kit for it. And then also instructions on priming and painting and the rules for our contest. And then they all submit and we give out prizes and have a big event on Earth Day for them. And that has truly grown through the years and something we all look forward to in the coalition and here in our office, the judging and just seeing the enthusiasm that's put forth by these young students. More recently, I've put together a subsidized rain barrels program, kind of a sale for targeted zip codes here in Western New York. And that comes out of an environmental settlement for a certain industry here locally. So it looks like that's going to be funded. It's in its infancy. It was proposed and the community votes on it. So I understand it received a favorable vote. And we also have another more general one pending through the CFA, I believe. And for that one, we're going within our MS4 communities, but also targeting SSO areas. So that is pending. And lastly, I've put together do-it-yourself workshops on rain barrels, how to build a rain barrel. And for that workshop, you know, there's a short PowerPoint type of presentation, and then I just bust out the screw gun and the hole saw cutters, and we build that rain barrel right there, and then raffle it off to the participants in the room. So with regards to what we're doing with Downspout Disconnect, a lot of it does center on engaging the public and just helping them to reduce their own personal stormwater footprints. So that's it in a nutshell.
And that's a lot. Wonderful. Well, thank you for being on the panel.
My pleasure.
So, Ethan and Dave, do you want to take a few minutes to talk about your program?
Yes, sure. We could go through some stuff. I got a few things, that, you know, for some updates and a few more things to plug, and then Dave can go through some stuff. So, so first off, so it was mentioned a couple times, but my name is Ethan Sullivan. I operate as the general permit coordinator and writer for the MS4 general permit. So we're kind of in a really great spot to be talking about it at the moment. We have our MS4 update that's going to be coming out hopefully at the beginning of next year. We have our scheduled meetings for executive approval, and provided that everything goes well with that, we'll have something out after the holidays. So subject to change a little bit based on dates, so I can't really give anything yet for when to expect it, but expect it at the beginning of 2022, which is very exciting. This is going to be some new, fresh updates, which we haven't really seen too much in the general permit since about 2010. We've had its own history and everything where we haven't really gotten a chance to push forward with how to catch up to some of the great progress that the coalition members and a lot of the members on this panel in particular have really gotten to push the stormwater management in these MS4 communities much further than where we are now. So it's really exciting. I'm hoping that we can get this out for you guys to see very soon, and pay attention for the public comment period. We'd love to see what your feedback is, and it really helps us out on tailoring the program to be a better benefit to everyone overall. And if you aren't representing an MS4 community at the moment, I still encourage you to take a look and keep it on your radar, because things change, and we have our census data that should be available very soon, which could impact how the urbanized area boundaries are implemented, and therefore could pull in some MS4 communities that are not yet regulated into the program. So keep an eye out for that. We do have that kind of overlap between the downspout disconnection practices and the rest of green infrastructure practices under the MS4 blanket, which is something that Andy, you kind of talked quite a bit about. So there's the maintenance requirements there that we are incorporating. We also have the Stormwater Design Manual update, which Dave will go through in just a little bit, where we have our O&M guidance manual that has been introduced into the design manual for moving forward. So we have some good bits of information about that could be really useful for these practices. And then kind of switching gears for NIWIA members, we have our Stormwater Committee for the state. This has been in effect for a few years now, but we've had a little bit of inactivity that we'd like to kind of move forward with some brand new, fresh stuff. So I currently operate as the chair for the committee, and we are looking to have a Stormwater Specialty Conference to follow up with our first one that we held in fall of 2019 in Syracuse, New York. So we had a really great, successful conference there where we had a couple of our members here, Chris and Andrew, who got a chance to speak at it. We had a really great involvement, really great opportunity to connect with other individuals in the field. So we're hoping to do that again, and the date right now we have is March 3rd to 2022. We're looking to host this in person in Albany, but obviously we will be following, all the COVID protocols and everything for health and safety. So, we're planning in person at the moment with some more information to follow. So with that, we're going to be doing some call for abstracts for any presenters who have an interest in the topics. We can talk a lot about stuff like this and more traditional green infrastructure practices, or we'd also look to explore some other opportunities in utility fees and other things, and some of the more outside of the stormwater, main focus pieces that we could talk about. So if you have any, general desire to speak there, take a look for the call for abstracts, or if you have a burning topic in mind that you really want to, push forward and see if we can go from there, feel free to send me an email after this. We'll have our contact information, and we'd love to keep the conversation going. And if you aren't a member of the Stormwater Committee, we would love to have, some more involvement. We have a really great group already established where we have a lot of, actually a couple members here. And, it's just a really great way that we can move forward and start to create some new resources that could be used by stormwater professionals throughout the state and get a chance to share and connect ideas and really just make some great progress in the right direction there. So with that, I think I could turn it over to Dave. I kind of have a wide range stuff.
Yeah. Good morning. Is it good morning? Still morning, yeah. Dave Gasper, the project manager for the construction general permit and managing the update to the New York State Stormwater Management Design Manual. Last construction permit was issued not too long ago in 2020. Not a lot of changes to that. So that, for the most part, has been running smoothly. We do have an update going of the New York State Stormwater Management Design Manual. A pretty significant update compared to some of the previous updates. For the most part, the department's sizing criteria, water quality volume, runoff reduction, channel protection, et cetera, that for the most part staying the same. It's more, the changes had to do with more we researched other states to see what new things have been learned about the different types of practices. We've added some additional practices. Which I think is a big plus. It's available now on our toolbox page, but the maintenance chapter that Ethan discussed is on that toolbox page right now, but we're going to incorporate that maintenance chapter, which goes through O&M for all the different practices within the design manual, both runoff reduction as well as the standard SMPs. A very good document. It was prepared by the Center for Watershed Protection, in my opinion, the gurus of stormwater management. And it's a great document. And like I say, that will be added to the design manual as part of this update. As far as timing, we're hoping that actually timing is running consistent with Ethan's MS4 permit. We may be getting, hopefully getting the draft out of the design manual for public comment towards the end of the beginning of the year. So watch for that as well as the MS4 permit. We're going to keep you busy reviewing all these documents. But I think everyone will like that. And for those looking, Chapter 5 includes the rooftop disconnection practice. It's there now. It hasn't changed much, the criteria from the update to previous design manual. And so, but if you do have comments or any issues with that, things that we can make better, be sure to let us know during the public comment period. And I think that's it that I have for right now. And again, if anybody has any questions right now or next few days on rooftop disconnection, I think they'll probably be sharing our contact information. Go ahead and give me a call or send me an email. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Thanks.
Great. Well, great to hear. There's a lot happening, so great to hear all your updates. Just to let you all know, we are getting questions coming in, and if we don't get to them live, we'll direct them to the panel, and hopefully somebody can reach out or but we'll try to get to as many of these as we can. I think I'll start with a permitting question since Dave and Ethan just spoke. One general question here. Can a CSO municipality obtain an MS4 permit in drainage areas where there's a separate sanitary storm pipe where stormwater is directed to a receiving water body?
Yeah, so with the MS4 general permit, as you know, it would just be outside of the CSO areas. We can issue permits kind of as required, and in these communities where CSOs and MS4 kind of coincide, we could definitely look to permit that. But you could also follow the general permits strategy of approach where we have our minimum control measures that everything implemented in there kind of just targets a specific task or operation undergoing in the municipality. So a lot of things that Mary McSwan, you mentioned, was education. That's a really great opportunity to kind of eliminate pollutants at the source. And it kind of goes through the illicit discharge detection elimination, the construction review, post-construction review, and then the municipal operations. So it would be a really great benefit to look to permit some of those areas in CSO communities as well, because a lot of the activities do go hand in hand in stormwater management.
Well, we do have at least 3 of our member municipalities are CSO communities, and within their areas of separate storm sewer systems, they applied for a permit and they do have it. So it is kind of limited to those areas. But a lot of things, like Ethan said, the public education stuff, you're not just going to focus on one small section of your city or town for that purpose. But I know one in particular, their construction requirements are actually more stringent within their CSO area than the state requirements. So you may not need a construction permit in a CSO, but you definitely have to follow rules and regulations for the wastewater provider.
This is Dave Gasper. Just to clarify, not many people over the years have, we have this in our FAQ document on our Stormwater Toolbox page, but if you have a construction project that disturbs the acre more, that in theory would have needed coverage under the construction general permit, if all potential discharges from that site go to the combined sewer, coverage under the construction general permit's not required. The thought is that those discharges are going to the head of the plant, combined sewer, therefore treatment, that it's covered, and so coverage under the stormwater permit's not required. And if anybody's interested in, that's in FAQ number 4, and the FAQ is about permit requirements on our webpage.
Fantastic. So maybe one more, since you're talking there, Dave, we got and I apologize if you covered this, in the revision of the design manual, we got a question, is there going to be a post-construction maintenance plan in the new revision? Is that like there was in similar to the guidance manual from 2017?
Yeah, we've incorporated the entire maintenance chapter that was in the 2017 version has been incorporated in total with some edits, clarifications, whatnot, in the design manual as its own chapter. And with that will be, Ethan, remind me, we had as part of that worksheets or inspection sheets. Are they going in the design manual?
Yep.
Okay.
So we'll have these kind of inspection sheets that you could use in the field. They're currently fillable PDF. I know a lot of individuals representing communities have progressed into more online forms, but these are just a good, exercise in at least seeing what information you could gather when you're out looking at these practices. And they are specific to the practices, so it's nice to have that visual, depiction of what you're looking for and at what place of the practice itself. So.
Wonderful. We have another question here. We have a question here about incorporating these projections, climate change projections into design. So the question was, if they're talking about the change factor website from the Northeast Climate Center, are they being used or incorporated into calculations for bioretention, rain gardens, other green infrastructure?
We've updated the design manual to call for the new precip data from NRCC, but I'm not exactly familiar with this tool that they're talking about, but we are headed in that direction, yes.
Great. We can share that in the chat. That link to that. So maybe a question for the regional coordinators, Andy, Mary, and Nancy. A question about ordinances. So what is the benefit of having a disconnect ordinance? And do you have experience with that? Are there model ordinances?
Yep, I'll tackle that one first. The benefit is, so if in your ordinance it says that your downspout has to be connected, then if a new construction project, they would like to disconnect the downspout, for example, to have it run to a bioretention or something like that, then they have to get specific planning board approval to do that. So if you take that requirement out of your code, then the developer, if they want to do that, they can propose it without having to take that extra step of going to the board. And I know there's a couple of our municipalities that did change their ordinance. I don't have the specific language, but if somebody wanted to email me, I could try to get you that language. But I know it gives the approval to do that, provided there's the adequate soils or the adequate stormwater practice to manage the runoff. So the code revision would be something along those lines.
And just to add to that, the other thing we learned from our work with the Model Local Law Project is sometimes the municipalities do not like to be locked in too closely in their code language. That's their own preference. So what they're using is the model local language from elsewhere as a policy guidance. So they'll really leave it up to their planning boards or their review engineers, whatever, to consider that when they're going to do the final improvement on the project. So it may not be written in the code, but it is used as policy, and that can be helpful as well.
Anything to add, Mary?
Nope, I think it's covered.
Great. Wonderful. Thank you so much. So the next question is about funding. So this it's sort of a specific question about funding. Are there any grant programs that would fund streetscape design for stormwater reduction? Anyone know about that?
Yeah, so I mean, with the GIGP for the EFC is the first that came to mind for me. I think that that's a really great grant program opportunity for streetscapes because there's a lot of different practices that are eligible under that, and they funded a lot of great streetscapes in the past. Additionally, we do have under the WQIP, like Chris had mentioned, we have the green infrastructure category under there. So both opportunities are great. Both are located under the consolidated funding application. So you could apply to both for the same project and utilize your match and your funding to kind of cover that. Chris, do you have anything to add to that?
Just tangentially, you know, there is some transportation money out there. I'm a water guy, so I don't know a lot about the transportation realm that can, you know, improve streetscapes and better manage stormwater. And a while ago, and I don't know if they still have it, but the CDBG, the Community Development Block Grant, had a Main Street program. You know, its impetus was economic development and kind of like facade revitalization and stuff, but it did have a streetscape component to it. So those are two other places I might ferret out if I was someone looking for additional funds.
Oh, we had a grant proposal successfully submitted for sort of the preliminary step to the GIGP, so an engineering planning grant, and it was a parking lot and it had a streetscape component to it, but you know, transforming the parking lot as well into green infrastructure. But it had quite a bit of road frontage too. So I just wanted to throw that out there because those planning grants give you everything you need to apply for the GIGP. And when we put out the RFP for that study, we were able to utilize the GIGP requirement list sort of as part of that RFP so that our study mirrored exactly what we needed to apply for the grant. We're still waiting to hear on the grant itself, but we're hopeful.
That's helpful. So here's another, this is a fairly specific question, but you may have general experience with this kind of issue. So somebody asked, local municipality will not allow downspout disconnect over asphalt because of ice. How does the warehouse you showed deal with that? I think, Andy, that's directed to you. But
yeah. Well, that's a great question because that specific location that I showed, I think that was maybe one of the unintended consequences that we had there at that location because you could see there was, I don't know, 8 or 10 downspouts. So, you know, we just have to make sure that that gets maintained properly, plowed, salted properly. And fortunately, where the water, where it runs off is to a grassed soil restoration area that we have, so it's able to you know, to capture all of that. But that is something to consider if you're gonna take it to a pavement area.
Yeah, I think most of these programs there is, you know, it's hard. I think Andy got into this nicely, but you really do need to think about site level conditions before you put in any kind of green infrastructure. So, or in this case, not a disconnect isn't necessarily green infrastructure.
Yeah, and we looked at that area as there was not going to be foot traffic, which would be more hazardous, but it's vehicle traffic. So it was considered okay, you know, to go that route.
Yeah, some of our communities, quite a few of them actually, were able to put in cisterns in their highway facilities. It was impractical to disconnect the downspouts, but they put huge cisterns subsurface and they utilized the captured rainwater for their water trucks and also for their, one has a nursery and their streetscape plantings and all of those types of watering needs that they have at the municipal level.
That's wonderful. That's a great example of really thinking about this runoff as a potential benefit. You know, that's really a resource.
Can I add something?
Please.
Yeah, there's a real benefit to looking at things at the site plan level. It's really critical, but that green infrastructure guidance document that we put together in 2010 breaks it out for a residential property. using, a grid system and looking at where your own downspouts are and where potential locations for rain gardens, things like that. But having worked on that, put together that publication, it was a real learning experience for me to see for our own property, like where you could really put things and start looking at the soil. So as a hands-on tool, just to get a feel for what better site design is really all about and the considerations that go into, where do you put a rain barrel, where you put a rain garden. It's a little handy tool that way, or publication for that purpose.
Wonderful. Well, it unfortunately looks this happened fast. We're at our time, actually. I just want to, before I get into thank yous, just any quick closing thoughts, anything people wanted to say and they didn't get a chance to share?
Okay.
I guess
That's great.
Yeah, one thing I'll just say is I think one thing that is clear is that there is a lot of potential for regional coordination. And I think, hearing about Mary, Nancy's, and Andy's experiences, that there's a lot of benefit to cooperating and coordinating at a regional level. So to get this kind of work done. So it was great to have you all on the panel, you, Ethan and Dave as well. Go ahead, take it away, Meredith.
I just want to echo what Kristen said. Thank you so much to the panel today for joining us, and I really appreciate the audience's questions coming in. We'll be able to follow up on some of these questions after the panel today, but I'd also encourage folks to check out the website posted on the last slide here, and we've got some resources that we'll be posting for you, including we'll also share webinar today as well. We will have an evaluation survey that pops up right after the webinar. You'll also receive a link to the survey in an email that follows this afternoon, and we'll appreciate your participation in our evaluation survey just to let us know about today's topic and other interesting topics that you'd like to see us doing. So let us know. And again, thank you to everybody today. I'll go ahead and end the webinar today in a minute, and just want to say thanks to everyone again for presenting and for participating. I hope everybody has a good rest of the day, and thanks.
Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you very much for having us. Appreciate it.
Bye.
Thank you all. Take care.